Okay. So now it should work. Now you see this is our office, right? Office, sorry, our lab. It's actually Nivi's lab, who is lending to us, Professor Nivimani. And so you see, this is the mother of the child. This is my assistant. This is me, and this is my other assistant, Sophie. Okay. So this is the setup of the experiment with the toys, and she will explain the child a little bit the experiment, and then the puppet will enter in the scene, okay? Because this is a true validation task. So the goal of this experiment is to make sure that to test, to figure out whether they can actually understand these sentences with their surface scope interpretation and inverse scope interpretation. So this is the experiment where they check for the surface scope interpretation, okay? Because they're going to present some scenarios which are actually true for both the scope. So either they do, or at least they do surface scope if they understand this sentence, okay? And yeah, and then we're going to talk about this problem about certain scenarios that are compatible with two interpretations. Okay, so. Stuck again. My video is stuck again. Let me see if I can put in full screen if things are going to be better. No. Why do you do this to me? Okay, let me try the last thing. If it doesn't work, no. Let me try with only one monitor. No, I mean, the video is stuck on my monitor. Do you see the video unfolding? No, right? Oh, now it works a little bit. No. Right, so I will try to find the solution to this problem, okay? Sorry about this. Yesterday was working. I don't know why today is not working. I guess it's Zoom conflicting a little bit with the system. But yeah, I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots from this video, and then I will try to make it. But the idea is that so here's the puppet, right? Here are some dinos. These are the pirates. Okay. And so okay, good. So what the experimenter is going to ask the child is basically in the PDF that I sent you. So the first thing that the experimenter is going to tell the child is that these pirates are going to do are going to have some adventures in this island where they wrecked their ship. Okay, so at some point there is a big storm that is rising. The waves are really high, and the ship is shaking so hard that it falls in the water. Okay, that all the pirates fall in the water, and then the puppet is going to say, the pirates fell into the water. Die Piraten sind in Wasser gefallen. Okay? And the child has to say whether the puppet is right or wrong. And they make sure that the child understands that he has to say that the puppet is right, because it is right. All the pirates, as you can see from this picture, are falling in the water. Okay? Yeah. Then the second control scheme, to make them understand that sometimes the puppet does not say the truth, does not tell the truth. Okay? The second sentence would be, the pirates managed to go back to the boat, but they actually didn't, because the boat drifted away. So in this case, the child has to say, no, the puppet is wrong. Okay? And they explain the child how the experiment works, and they make sure that the child understood that in these two control sentences, he had to say yes when the puppet told the truth, and no when the puppet didn't tell the truth. Okay? Now, when we move to the real experiment, okay, like this, for instance, was the first filler item. So it was a sentence like, the pirates swim back to the beach. Okay, and you could see that the pirates did swim back to the beach. So the child had to say, yes, the puppet is right. And then we get to the first experimental trial involving our interesting items. And so, let me see, where are we? Could be this one. Right. So this is, right. This is, alle Piraten sind nicht auf den Baum geklettert. All the pirates did not climb on the tree. Okay? And you see that in the scenario, all the pirates fell. Now, this might not be the right scenario, actually, because the pirates are hiding behind. Sorry, I think I got the wrong. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Maybe this one. Yeah, this one. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if this one is right or not, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. So you see all the pirates are here. They're close to the little trees here. They're running away from the dinos. They're scared from the dinos. And the sentence is, all the pirates did not climb back on the tree. And as you see, no one of them did. Okay. So if you interpret this sentence with the inverse scope, then you would say that the puppet is wrong, right? Because in fact, no pirate came back to the tree. So if not all of the pirates came back to the tree, that is compatible with some of the pirates going back to the tree. And if you interpret inverse scope by assigning the interpretation to this sentence that not all of them went back to the tree, but some of them did, right? This interpretation would not be compatible with this kind of scenario. However, if you interpret your inverse scope sentence, with the inverse scope interpretation, which is compatible with the extreme case in which no pirate went back to the ship, then they should say yes. If you interpret this sentence with a surface scope interpretation, where no pirates came back to the ship, to the tree, climbed back to the tree, then again, you would say yes. Okay? So you see, this scenario is not really critical to see whether children adopted one of the two scope interpretations, because even if they interpret the sentence with the surface, with the inverse scope, sorry, not all the pirates climb on the tree, they would still be compatible with this scenario, okay? So the only thing that this condition can tell us is whether the children interpret these sentences correctly, whether they integrated the meaning of negation to the meaning of the sentence, right? And the only thing they can tell you is that they understood that there is a negation in the sentence. You cannot really know which one of the two interpretations they adopted. Can you tell me what kind of scenario we would need in order to test whether children adopted the inverse scope interpretation? What would we need with respect to the pirates and the tree? Do we need?
There has to be at least one pirate on the tree.
Right. Right. So it's like the horse jumping the fence situation. Okay. Do you all see this? Is this clear to all, or someone still has some doubts? This is very important.
It's clear.
Clear, right? So
yeah.
In order to have the not all interpretation, to make sure that you are really adopting the not all interpretation, you need a critical scenario where not all, but some of these pirates went back to the, okay? Good. Right? So, yeah, so basically this experiment included six critical trials. So then, you know, you had the pirates jumping on the dino, and then they would go to the volcano. And you see sometimes the child could play with the experimenter, but then he was not allowed to play during the critical testing time, okay? And then, yeah, so then they were all swimming in the volcano, not swimming with the mermaids. So this sentence was probably, all the mermaids did not take a bath in the volcano. Alle Meerjungfrauen haben nicht im Vulkansee gebadet. Okay? In fact, no one then did. And they could understand these sentences, okay? Unsurprisingly. If they don't understand this sentence, it means that they do not understand negation in this particular construction, okay? Okay, good. Now, this was just to show you how the true value judgment task works. And we can move to our theoretical issue again. So let's put on hold this, yeah. Right, so yeah, I just wanted to tell you one last thing, okay, about this. And this is the following. So let's go back to the Mussolinius experiment, okay? Let's go back to the critical situation in which two horses jumped over the fence and one didn't, okay? And let's assume that our participants, our children, would always reject this scenario. We'd always say the puppet is wrong, okay? What Mussolini, Thornton, and Crane infer from this is that children could only access surface scope interpretation, that they were not able to derive the inverse scope interpretation. Because if they were able to derive the inverse scope interpretation, then they would say yes, okay? Now, I mean, I gave you already the solution to this question, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. Do you think that there could be another reason why children always say that the puppet is wrong? Why children always reject the inverse scope interpretation? Do you think that there could be another reason other than them not being able to derive that interpretation? Could there be a situation in which they actually access both interpretations, but they always say that the puppet is wrong? Do you have any idea about this? Any guess? Anything?
Maybe there always is a primary reading, and for the children, the primary reading is the surface scope negation.
What do you mean by primary?
So maybe they can access both, but they have to think a little bit about the other option. I suppose
Right.
that's,
So maybe they do access both, right? You're saying, but one of the two, for some reason, is not primary. Maybe it's too difficult. Maybe it requires more thinking, right?
yes.
Yes, very good point. But there is also another possibility, which is that they can access both, and maybe both are equally difficult for them, but for some crazy reason that we don't know, they would prefer one, right? Maybe they prefer a context in which all the characters either do something or they don't do something. Or maybe they prefer the surface scope reading because they like to interpret every note as none, right? So for whatever reason, if it is true that they have a strong preference for the surface scope reading, this preference could actually mask their behavior in rejecting the surface scope. Sorry, in rejecting the inverse scope, right? Which would suggest that they do not reject the inverse scope because they cannot derive it, but because they do not prefer it, right? We don't know if this is the case or not, but if this is the case, then if you only present one scenario with this kind of paradigm, you're not going to be able to tease apart these two possibilities, okay? So in order to make things work, you have with true value judgment task, and this is a universal principle, okay? You must assume that this pragmatic principle holds, which is the charity principle, okay? Which says always try to adopt an interpretation that makes the puppet statement true, if possible. So always try to say that the puppet is true if you can. Be charitable, okay? And they assume that children always do this because they like to say that people are right. So from this assumption, they say, look, children are charitable. They would have loved to say that the puppet was right, but they really said that the puppet was wrong. So no way they could access that interpretation, okay? And okay, so in the next classes, we are gonna discuss about these issues more in depth. And we will see that in other experiments, people found different things, okay? Now, if there is no other question, in the last 20 minutes remaining, I will start introducing some theoretical topics about inverse and surface scope. And if I find them. And yeah, I will also post these slides on the internet. There you go. Okay. So Right. So now that we have seen a little bit about how this experiment works and how we can test different interpretations assigned to different sentences against a scenario, let's go back to our theory and let's have a look a little bit about when this scope shift operation is allowed, okay? Which ones are the cases when we can switch the order of quantifiers in a sentence and when we cannot? And why? If there is any principle that determines the availability of this operation, okay? What the hell? Okay, so if you had a look at the paper that I sent you at the very beginning of this course, it was really about this issue that we are talking about. But we are going to start from another work, which was Danny Fox thesis and Danny Fox work, scope economy. Okay, I'm going to also put this work in the shared folder. You don't have to read it all, but if you are interested, you should have a look at that. So these two papers are kind of the same issue. And the overall idea is that the possibility of applying this special operation of scope shift seems to depend on the nature of the expressions that this operation targets, okay? On the nature of the quantifiers and negation and what kind of relation occurs between them. Something similar to what we talked about in the introduction to semantics. So the key question is, what constrains scope shift? What is the principle that tells us when we can do it and when we cannot? And whether this is a general principle, whether it's like something about the relationship between sentences or something about our processing preferences. Okay? So Fox's idea is that in general, there is such a principle, and this principle is scope economy. Why is it economy? Because it says that only apply some extra operation that is going to cost you some processing resources when, at the end of the day, you get a semantic effect. So economy, usually, you reason about economy issues when you want to claim that certain operations do not take place vacuously. Because there is a sort of an economical principle in our parsing which tells us, do not do things for no reason because you're just wasting resources with the potential outcome of incurring into a loop without exit, okay? So if something is vacuous, don't do it. Avoid vacuity. All right, so his very definition is that scope shift can only apply if it yields semantic interpretation, which would be impossible without its application, right? So in other words, scope shift is allowed only when it's necessary. It's the last resort for achieving a designated interpretation, okay? So only if it has a semantic effect, which means it leads to a different interpretation. Now, you might object at this point that there are different ways to achieve the not all interpretation from a sentence with every not, right? And the way is just to switch overtly the order of the words. So this last resort idea is to be applied to the very same sentence. So it does not allow to overtly make these operations, but the idea is that you cannot achieve a designated interpretation, right, with that particular sentence that you have without cheating, okay? Right, so the economy principle says blocks vacuous instance of scope shift. And you see why this is reasonable, right? Because otherwise, every sentence that we hear would give rise to a lot of different parallel parses that we don't really care about, and we make us lose a lot of time. And also, we would never be sure about, for instance, how to interpret the words in the right order in a sentence. So these constraints are really important. Okay, so let's take an example. John loves every girl, okay? Only have one quantifier, but you can think John as a sort of a quantifier. You can think John as a definite description, okay? The guy named John. So it's a little bit like the boy. Right, so let's consider John as a sort of a quantifier. And then this is a typical notation to make explicit the scope operation between words, right? So you have John quantifier, you have every girl, John is taking scope on every girl, and then you have this T, which is a sort of a trace of the quantifiers that reminds, you know, formally the operations that Mike told us about, right? So T1 is co-indexed with John, T2 is co-indexed with every girl, and this means that John loves every girl, okay? And then you can scope out every girl. So in this representation, right, first you compute every girl, and then you say for X such as, sorry, for every individual X, if X is a girl, then John loves X. Okay? Right. So before going on, right, just intuitively, do you think these two sentences have a different interpretation? Do you think the interpretation of John is such that for every girl, John loves the girl, is different from every girl is such that John loves her? Please, tell me what you think. Intuitively.
I'm unable to see a difference between those two interpretations.
Okay, you don't see a difference? Does anyone see a difference? Or you're...
Yes, I see difference.
You see a difference?
Yes, because John is a clear subject and boy is not. It's indefinite.
No, sorry. I'm not comparing John with the boy. I'm comparing John in wide scope position and John in narrow scope position with respect to every girl.
Okay, sorry, I understood fine.
No problem, no problem. So, do you see any difference between these two interpretations? If you know, if they're understandable. Okay, so let's see. So we see that it's not clear, right, to inspect the meaning of these sentences. Write this just by writing them down with this fancy format. So what we really want to do is to test them across some real scenarios and see how it works, okay? So let me play this trick for you. Oh, right, so you are jumping to this slide with a boy, every girl, right. Right, so, and the idea would be to compare John to a boy, okay? And let's see what happens with a boy. So to investigate the relationship between different scope configurations, or with these different sentences, what a good semanticist has to do is to compare their truth conditions, okay? And we know that the truth conditions are the situations in which these sentences are true, and the situations in which these sentences are false. So let's play this trick. Let's have these two different structural representation of the sentence John loves every girl, okay? And let's come up with some scenarios that try to make this sentence true and to falsify these sentences, okay? So this is John Travolta. And these are all the girls in our universe. Okay? So let's start with the surface construction. First, we have John. Now we want to check if, given that there is John in higher position, he loves every girl. Okay? So he loves this girl here. He loves this girl here. He loves this girl here. And he loves this girl here. So he loves all of them. So is it true that John loves every girl in this scenario? Yes. Good. Let's play the same trick with the other sentence, with the other configuration, scope configuration. Okay, true. So now, instead of starting from John, we want to start from every girl, because our logical form now tells us that for every individual, if this individual is a girl, then it must be the case that John loves the girl. Okay? So let's start with this girl here. Is she loved by John? Yes. This one here? Yes. This one here? Yes. This one here? Yes. So you see that in the same scenario, these two scope configuration give rise to the same interpretation. Can we conclude now that these two scope configurations are equivalent? Yes or no? Anyone? Just guess. You can also write in the chat if you want. Oh, I'm not seeing the chat. Do you think this is enough, or we have to do something else? Okay, I give you the solution. This is not enough. We have to do something else. So now we check that these sentences are true in the same situation, but what we really want to do is to pick a situation in which one of these sentences is false, and to check whether the other scope configuration must be false as well. So then we can have an equivalence, a double arrow, a biconditional, right? If we find that in every situation in which one is true, the other one is true as well, and in every situation in which one is false, the other one is false as well, then we are in business, right? If we only find one situation in which the meaning of these two configurations mismatches, then we know they're not equivalent, okay? So let's modify our situation, and let's make sure that this little girl here, which I don't remember the name, probably Cinderella-like, she actually does not love John. Sorry, John does not love this girl here, okay? You see the love direction is unidirectional here. So now let's judge these sentences again. This is false, right? Because this sentence that says that John loves every girl, but this is not true because he doesn't love this girl. Now, what about this sentence? Is it true that for every single girl, John loves her?
No.
No, right? For the same reason. So now we have a much better intuition about the fact that these two sentences are equivalent. And, you know, it was kind of predictable, right? So you might say, why are you wasting this time to show me this? It's obvious that these two sentences meaning the same thing. Whether you start from the girl or you start from John, there is a one-to-one relation between John, who is one guy, and all the girls in the domain. And that's it. Whether you order the whether you change the order of the application of the quantifiers, doesn't really matter, right? Good, but this is a problem. I mean, it's not a problem. It's not a problem for John now, but it's gonna give rise to interesting things. Okay, so we conclude the two interpretations are semantically equivalent. Therefore, scope shift is predicted to be vacuous. Therefore, under Scope's economy principle, you do not do scope shift. Okay? Quite intuitive. That's fine. Good. So we're fine. Awesome. Now, let's take this sentence. Let's make things a little bit more complicated. Let's take two real quantifiers. And now we are using the examples that we have seen already with Mike last class, okay? So one sentence is a boy, so the sentence is a boy loves every girl, okay? Indefinite qualifier, universe qualifier. According to one interpretation, you start from a boy has wider scope, right? And according to the other interpretation, again, you start with every girl. So let's play, so in logical terms, the indefinite is translated into an existential quantifier and a conjunction of the predicates. So a boy runs is there exists an individual who is a boy and who runs. The universal quantifier is translated into logical terms with an implication. So every girl runs would be universal quantifier for every girl is such that, sorry, for every y is such that if y is a girl, y runs. Okay, so they're logically different. When not only because of the operator, but also because of their binding properties and the way their meaning is implemented in the sentence. Okay. Now, before the ambulance comes to pick me up, let's try to inspect these two conditions. Okay. So this means that there is a boy who loves every girl. So let's take this rock guy here, this metal head, and he's going to be our boy. And turns out he loves every girl. Fine. This sentence is true, right? Good. Now let's start from the girls. Every girl is such that there is a boy that loves her. Same situation. Do the same trick. Let's pick this girl. It is true that someone loves her. This girl, someone loves her. This girl, someone loves her. This girl, someone loves her. True. Okay? So by taking this particular context, we find that these two sentences are both true. But I told you this is not enough. To make sure that these two representations are actually equivalent, we also have to make sure that they are false in the same context. And then we will never be able to find a context that makes one true and the other false. Okay? So let me introduce you to Ryan Gosling, who's more famous in the neurolinguistic class. So this is going to be his only appearance here, right? And let me tell you that Ryan Gosling loves these two girls here, and he does not love, what was her name? The fiancée of Roger Rabbit. The rock guy, he does not love this girl here, but he loves these two girls. Okay? Jessica Rabbit, thank you. Good. So now, very important question for you. Let's take this situation, okay? And I'm gonna ask you, is there some boy, either Ryan Gosling or this guy, who loves every girl?
No.
No, right? There isn't. because this guy doesn't love this girl, this guy doesn't love this girl. Good. Now let's move to the girl's perspective, and let's scope out every girl so that it takes scope over the indefinite. So this is false. Good. And let's play the same trick. Let's start with this girl. Is there a boy that loves this girl? Yes, Ryan Gosling. What about this girl? Is there a boy that loves her? Yes, Ryan Gosling. Who cares if this guy doesn't love her? Okay, there is at least one boy who loves her. What about Jessica Rabbit? Is she loved by someone? Yes, the rock guy. What about Cinderella? Is she loved by someone? Yes, this guy. So my question is it true that for every girl there is a boy that loves her? I see a thumb. Yes. Nice.
No.
So this sentence is true. Right? So, big problem. We just found a context in which the same sentence in two different scope configuration gives rise to different interpretations. In particular, in this particular context, this sentence would be false and this sentence would be true. Okay? So, these two scope configurations are not equivalent. Therefore, Danny Fox predicts that scope shift is not vacuous because it gives you a semantic effect. Therefore, it might take place. Yeah. Was there a thumb up? No. Okay. So according to Fox's idea, when you have this situation when if you make a scope shift, you generate a meaning that is different, that is semantically different, the operation is not vacuous, then you can do it, then it's allowed by grammar. Then a boy loves every girl is scopally ambiguous. Okay? Good. So there's a problem with this, and we are gonna see it next time, okay? So next time, we will finish this introduction, and then I will show you another experiment, this time with the video working that I did, that is investigating this very issue with children and with adults, and also with eye tracking, okay? Before concluding the class, I would like to ask you, are you familiar with eye tracking? Have you ever had any introduction to eye tracking? Or you would like me to tell you something about this at a very general level? So someone says she's familiar with eye tracking? Would you like to have a few notions about that? Would you like me to tell you a few things? Okay, good. So next time we will finish this theoretical part quite quickly. Then I'll tell you a little bit about eye tracking, and then I will start talking to you about this experiment that we did. Okay? Good. So I'm done for now. You are free to go. If there is someone who wants to ask something, I'm going to stay here for a few more minutes. Okay?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Sure.
You have mentioned a PDF document. Where can I find it?
Right. So
an experiment.
Yeah.
PDF document.
Yeah, I updated it in the chat, so you should find it in the chat.
Actually, I can't see it.
Yeah, if you scroll up, probably if you activate the chat, if you go to view, you should have an option that tells you to show the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
I will post it also on the share folder, so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, that was the script of this experiment.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Any other doubt? Any curiosity? Otherwise, have a nice day, and I will see you.
That is true.
I will see you in 2 days
Yes.
at 2 p.m. Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye, everyone.
See you next
Have a
time.
nice day.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.